and I thought I'd try making a video that I've wanted to make for a long time. It's a deep dive on Anatta. Now, you may have heard of Anatta before, or Anatman before. It's a Pali term that refers specifically to not self. Now notice I didn't say it refers to no self. It's not really a correct interpretation, no self. Anatta really points to and can be translated as not self or non-self. And it is a fundamental aspect of the Buddha's teachings on liberation, the Dharma. Now, the reason I wanted to go into a bit of depth about it is because it's often misunderstood and misused really in modern spirituality and awakening circles. And that misunderstanding and the misuse of Anatta and the teachings on Anatta result in confusion. In fact, a teaching that is supposed to guide us towards liberation, because of the way it's interpreted, it results in us never ever getting there. If we take it to be, as is often described, no self, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, it will never help us find liberation. So yeah, hopefully this video can be helpful. I mean, I might edit it and chop it up here and there, just because it's probably going to be a bit longer and a bit more detailed. But the fact that I feel like a detailed video is necessary, or Anatta needs a deep dive, kind of points to the fact that this teaching on Anatta, not self, is subtle, it's complex, it's nuanced, it isn't straightforward, and it cannot be reduced into a tiny sentence of 4 words, there is no self. That statement, which is, I would say, probably one of the most limiting modern statements about awakening, that statement kind of closes the door on our exploration. So let's start there. Let's start with some of the misconceptions on Anatta. So I just kind of mentioned it there. You will hear again and again and again people saying there is no self. I'm not saying that there is anything wrong per se with saying that, but what that is not is in line with the teachings on Anatta, and it's also not an invitation to explore, to liberate, to realize, to let go of delusion. It isn't that. It is an ontological statement of truth. And it's closed, isn't it? It's just like, it's like this. There is no self. And what that does is it just shuts off any curiosity as to what this experience is. The teachings on Anatta were offered by the Buddha as a skillful means to explore our relationship to me-making and mind-making, attaching to the conditions of the world, the physical senses, the emotional perceptions, the conscious movements of mind that we grab onto and we say, this is me, this is mine, I'm this. The Buddha offered the teachings on Anatta to say, well, actually, maybe that's not the case. Can we see the not self characteristic in these passing phenomena? So you can already see that, just as an introduction, that is an entirely different way of communicating and inviting us to explore the heart, the mind, this moment, liberation, as opposed to making just a solid, clear statement, there is no self. And I understand why it happens. It's kind of born out of this desire in the modern age to kind of just shrink wrap and simplify the human experience, including the awakening experience, into the most kind of poignant, direct pointer possible. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of sweet that we want that, but life is complex, and our attachment to things and the I am making, or the I am conceit of saying I am this, I am that, that's conditioned over time and it's nuanced. So it takes a while to explore. So I would say that saying there is no self it's kind of damaging. It's harmful. It stops us in our tracks before we've even begun. Really, the teachings on Anatta offered by the Buddha, they're not offered as a statement of truth about the self. It is not an ontological, philosophical statement that there either is or isn't a self. That's really not what Anatta is about. It is a skillful means, a practice, and a pointer towards the nature of conditions. And if we follow the pointer towards the nature of conditions, we explore then how conditions come and go and how we attach to them. And then we're invited to explore, well, what else is there when we're not attaching? When we recognize that, let's say, these words or the sounds that you're hearing, they come and go. They're experienced, let's say. They arise and cease in experience. If we recognize that these things that come and go, these sounds, they are not self, then the things that we usually say, that's me, that's mine, I'm this, I am this experience of the listener or the understander of sounds. Instead of doing that, our grip loosens. We soften our tendency to grab and cling and attach to that which is impermanent. And then the invitation arises, well, what else is there? How can we explore the moment without saying that I am this? So this is, you can see, very subtle, very nuanced aspect of teachings, which the statement that you will hear again and again, there is no self, does nothing to help us to realize. It just doesn't do anything to help us. It just stops us and stops our exploration in its tracks. So I would say, if you hear that being spoken, it's not a case that it's right or wrong. I would just be wary of, is that useful? Is it actually useful for you to say or to believe that there is no self? What does that do? Does the believing that there is no self open a curious heart to explore? Does it do that? Or does it set up this kind of feedback reverberation of self-denial? And I see this very often. I've seen it in myself in the past. I've seen it in other people in the past. Because one of the aspects of human experience that is undeniable, is that you are not experiencing what I'm experiencing right now. So this sensation that is so rich and fully felt, well, I can't say much about it actually, but it's just this vibrant experience of unfolding being that is, you could conventionally say, the rubbing of fingers together. It includes warmth and friction and energy. As I do that, you're not experiencing it. So in a way, is there a self? I don't know. But for me to say that actually, well, there's no self, there is no individuation in experience at all, well, that doesn't cut it either, does it? Because we get to see all of the time pretty much that although I can sense that what I truly am is not this separate, sticky, clumpy bundle of feelings and perceptions and experiences, it's also clear in every moment that there is something very intimate, very, very intimate about this experience that is different to what you're experiencing. So then we investigate that. And saying there is no self just doesn't do that. It doesn't allow us to investigate the truth of what that apparent paradox or mystery points to. How can it be felt that there is no separation, no feeling of other, and yet the absolute demonstrable knowing of this experience which is not yours? What is that? And I'm not here to give answers. This is where the exploration takes us. We're invited to explore that in experience again and again and again. So yeah, first misconception is that there is no self. Don't take anybody's word for that. In fact, if you hear somebody saying that, say, okay, cool story, but let me find out. Let me explore the way that I make myself, what I attach to, and is that true or not? Do I suffer when I cling and when I solidify into something a bit more fixed? So another misconception that I hear a lot, I'm just going to get a drink. Another misconception that I hear a lot is that no self, and it kind of follows off the back of that. Instead of exploring the teachings on Anatta, which is the not self characteristic in conditions, which again is nuanced, is that no self, we assume that there's something called no self, which is in itself nonsense. But if we assume there is something called no self, then there seems to have become this further extrapolation that no self becomes a stage on the path. It becomes a stage of realization. There is something that's being purported around and thrown around called no self-realization. Who is the one that realizes that? It's that simple, isn't it? Like, if you're going to purport that there is a realization of no self, where is that realization? And again, that question invites a deeper exploration of the mystery of this experience. But the teachings on Anatta were never meant to be, they were never given as a stage of realization. That's really not what the teachings are. Anatta does not point to that. Now, some people might talk about the 10 fetters which the Buddha espoused. This is kind of like a list of beliefs, you could say. He said that these beliefs chain us to suffering in conditioned experience. And there's a couple that deal with the self-making mechanism. The first one is Sakyaditi, which is self-view. Notice it isn't anything to do with Anatta, but it is self-view, Sakyaditi, and that's a strong belief that I am this fixed individual, okay? And it's said that once we break through or let go of that belief, there is a deeper freedom. This is one of the fetters that points towards Kensho, that early stage of liberation. And then much later on, I think what is happening is people are talking about the 8th fetter, which is Manya. Not Anatta, you'll notice, it's Manya. And Manya points to conceit. And it's the conceit that I am. I am this, I am that. I am these conditions in the world. Now, again, it's said that like once that fetter falls, there's just this deep liberation. It's very late in the stage because it points to a very deep letting go of what we've been conditioned to think we are. But what it is not is no self-realization. It is not that. Because, like I said, the term Anatta is not in there. It is the letting go of that habitual conceit to say that I am. And that is a verb, that is an activity that we are involved in. So we make the things of the world me, we make them mine. We cling on to the passing conditions and say that's what I am. And the Buddha talks about this in a lot of detail often, and he invites us again and again to recognize that habitual conceit, that habitual motion to cling to and identify with. And he says to invite yourself to recognize this is not mine, this is not I am not this, this conditional unfolding. And you call it the senses, feelings, thoughts, perceptions, consciousness, form. But these things that come and go in experience, that's not what we are. So the practice becomes one of letting go of that movement to say that's what I am. Notice how this is very different, not even subtly different, very different from saying there is no self, or there comes a stage when suddenly you see there is no self and there is freedom. This is pointing to a habit, a conditioned habit of the body-mind to identify with that which is not self. And that's where the teachings on Anatta point to. They're basically saying that, listen, there is this habit to misidentify with conditions, and we take it to be what we are. And what we are, it's composed of the Buddha would say 5 heaps, 5 aggregates of experience. So feelings, forms, perceptions, volitional formations or thought, self-centered thought, and consciousness, discriminating consciousness. So yeah, what we take ourselves to be is this jumble of experiences that we attach to, these conditional unfolding experiences that we say, this is me, this is mine, I am this. And they become so insistent, incessant, pervasive, continual, that it creates this sense of, I am this fixed self. I'm Simon. I'm this rigid individual. And the entire teachings on Anatta is to say, well, no, not that actually. Like, look at that habit of mind and body to attach and recognize that these conditions are not self. But what happens then? Let's say, and we can do this now, actually. There's a very simple exercise that we can do in any moment, So let's say you rub your hands together. And just do that along with me. I'll do it away from the microphone, up here, around here. But you're rubbing your hands together. And then if you close your eyes, you can just feel into the sensation. You're not trying to make anything of it. You're just noticing that it's like this. There is feeling. Maybe there's things like temperature, friction, maybe some energy, a bit of stickiness, a bit of coldness. But what we notice is that it's shifting, it is changing all of the time. And we can invite ourselves to say that these conditions, as they unfold in experience, these are not self. I am not the shifting, impermanent, unfolding explosion of experience. So the rubbing of the hands, they're convenient terms, aren't they? But actually, the sensations, the feelings, the temperature that's unfolding, that's not what I truly am. They can be experienced, but there's nothing to fix onto. There's nothing to latch onto. And then there's mystery. There is the invitation to say, if I'm not that, and we let go of that movement to attach to, I am Simon rubbing their hands together. If I don't do that, there's just experience. And then what? And it's this beautiful, deep, rich, nuanced exploration of experience when we no longer attach to the conditions of the world as self. This is Anatta. This is exploring the not self nature of conditions. And by doing this, and we can do it with every condition, every experience, in every moment the invitation is there, is to recognize that these things that come and go, these words, these sights, these sounds, these smells, these emotions, these thoughts, they are not self. They are not permanent. So let go of that clinging, me-making and mind-making habit that says me, mine, I'm this. Notice, if you can, notice that movement. I spent so many years doing this in meditation because it was just so fascinating to see that habit of clinging, of grasping around experience. I would, let's say, feel a sensation in my knee whilst meditating and notice immediately how it felt like a juggernaut, really, of conditioned momentum would, in attention, would say, look at this thing, this thing that is you, that's yours. It's almost like a grabbing hold of the experience to try and make something of it, to make sense of it, to be someone who knows what's going on. And you can almost feel the lurch of the I am conceit almost when it begins or just as it's begun, to try and grab hold of our experiences and make them us, and us then make perceptions and sense of the world through our feelings. So we can spend a lot of time in practice exploring that, just very, very simply. If you're stood outside in a park and you're looking at trees, and you feel your feet on the floor, notice that. Notice, is there a movement of kind of grabbing the experience, trying to make something of it? And that is the movement of selfing. You know, the I am conceit forming is basically saying that this is what I am, this is the world, and I am this within it, you know. So yeah, it's a powerful practice, but it's deep, it's nuanced, it takes time, it takes consistency. It is not sufficient to say, just to ever really say there is no self. That doesn't invite us into this fathoms deep practice of liberation. And that was always the Buddha's intention. By sharing these teachings on Anatta, and he's done them a few times. There's one specific sutta called the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, which is his second teaching, actually. It's the second teaching he ever shared with the world as the awakened Buddha. And it's to 5 friends that he was on the ascetic path with. And these are friends that are deep, deep, deep meditators already. They have a depth of practice that very few people have in the world. And he shares this beautiful, profound exploration of the not-self nature of characteristics. And he invites an exploration of the skandhas, the forms, the heaps of experience that we attach to. Like, beautiful. Just that, if we can read that sutta and get ourselves into that mode of exploration and inquiry, it will begin opening so many doors to us and help us to shed so much of that delusive clinging that is never possible by making an ontological statement about reality. It just isn't. I say, it's like this. It just doesn't get us anywhere, does it? It's like, actually, let's explore the nature of this. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how long I've been talking for. It's all just kind of what's been arising in experience. But it'd be great to hear what you think, or if you want any more guidance. I mean, I kind of have a reasonable amount to say on this because I've got a very deep practice exploring this in my experience over many years, and like both meditative, inquiry-based, vipassana, so insight-based practice, and also the doctrine, what the Buddha has taught about this me-making and mind-making habit that binds us to suffering. So if you want to hear more about it, let me know. Yeah, I'd be happy to go into these things in a lot more detail. In a related note, this does point towards some of the finer mechanism of dependent origination. So the me-making and mind-making habit that keeps us bound, you could say the I am conceit, it's kind of broken down in more detail in the Buddha's teachings on dependent origination. So I have put a video in the world kind of going into more detail about dependent origination and the 12 steps of dependent origination. So I'll link that in the description below. So if you're interested in these deep dives, you can go and deep dive there and get into a bit more of a dharma rabbit hole. But yeah, thanks for listening. I hope this is helpful. And yeah, hopefully more soon.